What's up, YouTube? It's Leo again, Coach White Belt, if you've followed me before I changed the channel name. And today I'm going to be talking about the Inwin 301 once again for thermal reasons, but I've got an update for it, which is I have recently purchased a RX 6800. And this is the XFX reference model, which unfortunately for me, I got this box, the XFX box, which maybe some people would prefer, but I really did want the one with the picture of the GPU on the front. Not that it matters for performance really, but it's just it was just my preference. Anyway, I got it for a pretty reasonable price. I was able to find it for just over retail, so I ended up picking it up. And I asked the seller why he was selling it at such a good price, and he said that he picked up a 3070, but it was a little bit outside of his price range. He just needed his money right then and there, pretty much I'm guessing, to pay money that he borrowed to get the 3070. Anyway, I also have a 5900X in here, and so it's a pretty hot CPU, and in terms of gaming performance, it's not nearly as good as the 5900X, but the guy who sold it to me had just upgraded to a 5900X, and I wanted this more for workstation performance as opposed to gaming performance. I'm working on some stuff in Unreal Engine, so extra VRAM, extra CPU power, 6 extra cores of same generation as my 3600X. So I'm selling my 3600X, and I've already sold my 5700 XT. And so what I'm going to talk about is the thermal performance of these components in here. And right now I'm running it open, and the CPU is running just a little bit. It's at, as you can, you can't see it on the screen, but you will hear shortly. It's in the teens, as high as 19, but oftentimes as low as 13 or so percent, because I'm recording this through Streamlabs. But I'll check it here in a minute. Just give me a second. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. So there you see it inside. Here's the box. I'm still using the stock Wraith Prism cooler, which I did not receive with the CPU. But I was happy with it with my 3600X, and I feel like it is sufficient for what I'm doing and how I'm using my 3900X, which I'll show you here in a minute. But let me change this so that you can see what I'm talking about. Alright, so you can probably see what I'm seeing now, which is I've moved my camera down into the bottom left corner, so now you can see sort of the Radeon software overlay in the top right hand corner. You can see the CPU is doing a little bit of extra work because I'm running OBS Streamlabs. So let's just get to it. So I'm gonna run Cinebench R20, and this is actually, let me reset my CPU back to stock settings so you can see just how it performs there, and then I'm gonna change it with Ryzen Master, and then you'll hear some some extra fan noise at the default settings as well. You can see I've got my selected voltage there of 1.24375 volts, and it runs as high as like 1.4 something when I'm running Cinebench. So I'll pull that up real quick. This is Cinebench R20. I know there's R23 out, but a lot of people are familiar with 20, so I'm gonna run with 20. And then I'll keep Ryzen Master open just so you can see what the temperatures are gonna be. So as you'll see right now, it doesn't actually run to the full boost clock, and this is because it can't really do that if it's utilizing too many cores, and some people argue even if it's just using more than one. And I'm sure you can hear the noise, so that gives you an answer of, you can see where the mic is sitting and sort of where the computer is in relation, so you can hear exactly how much noise it is exactly. And actually, I failed because I didn't put this on. So I'll let it run another cycle before I stop it. And so you can probably see that it's not even running to 4 gigahertz. It's running at about 3900 megahertz, and it's running as high as 83 degrees. When I try to boost this thing up to like 4300 or 4400 or something similar to that, I do have to increase the voltage quite a bit, and it ends up getting really hot. So I just don't. And I have tested it, just building the same scene from the same view in Unreal Engine at different settings, and I found that 4050 is kind of the sweet spot of, like, it doesn't get too hot, doesn't require too much voltage, and at the same time performs the task in just about the same amount of time. And so I've chosen that to be sort of my setting, and I found a voltage that works for it. And one thing is that you may not be able to find the same the stability for the same frequency at the exact same voltage for a few reasons. One is yours might perform a little bit better than mine. It might be just a silicon lottery sort of thing where yours is binned a little bit better than mine, or worse than mine, and you end up having to either increase the voltage over what I use, or you might even be able to decrease it if yours is a little bit better. Another thing is, the motherboard is sort of in control of what's going on with the voltage, and so some motherboards actually end up sending less voltage than others, and some might send more than others. And of course, it's not the motherboard sending this; it's the power supply. But the CPU's or motherboard is sort of the one in control of these settings. And so, where you might be setting yours to the same exact voltage I'm setting it to, your power supply may not be sending that exact same amount that mine is. And so that might be what you're seeing in some discrepancy and such. But you'll see it's already starting to drop clocks a little bit. It's no longer at the full 39. It's just shy of it. But you can see that the temperature is getting all the way up to 87 right now. Almost 88 there for a second. Hopefully you can see this. I'll keep it on the right hand side just to ensure that you can. And you can hear just how loud it is. It says here 100% CPU utilization. Of course, considering the boost clock, that's not entirely true, but it's close to. Oh, I forgot to mention, I also upgraded to 32 gigs of RAM. So when I'm not running Streamlabs OBS, you can see here that a common score for me is just over 7200. 7236. Yeah, and it runs as high as close to 8800. So now I'm going to run my manual settings, which means that it's no longer going to be able to boost up to the 4600 in single core or potentially dual core operations, but I'm okay with that, since games and almost any modern program will run multi-core anyway. So I just set it to 4050, and now you can see it's actually doing 4050, and it's running the voltage that I set it to. And you can see the temperature is sort of trying to drop down, but with it working constantly, it's having a little bit of trouble doing it. And you can hear that it is pretty noisy. And this is at full load, and I've tried to balance sort of my case fan noise with my CPU fan noise, my GPU noise and such. So I'll just stop this real quick. See how long it takes to cool off. And mind you, it is still running Streamlabs OBS. And one thing about the CPU is, even at this undervolt, the CPU easily gets up to 50 or 55 degrees Celsius when you're doing pretty much anything. Opening, I don't know, Google Chrome, or opening Ryzen Master, or watching a video, or really just about anything, viewing a PDF and scrolling through it, things like that. And so I've sort of set my fan curve to be really mild, below 60 degrees, and it's not going to really drop anymore. And as you can see, like, all I'm doing is running OBS or Streamlabs, and it's almost at 60. So it looks like it's going to hit 60 here in a second. Now it went back down. But you can see that even with a pretty light workload, in the teens or less, it's still running close to 60 degrees. And so I set my fan curve to be pretty mild, below 60 degrees, because I know it's going to hit 60 all the time, or at least up to nearing 60. And so it's kind of what I set it to. But oh, I didn't get to show you, well, the Cinebench score without changing it, but I'll tell you, it's just about the same. It's about 7100 or something like that, just letting it auto run. But it does, like I said, run down to like 3900, and so I get a little bit more performance raising it up to 4050, and it doesn't heat up quite as much. And the cool thing about Ryzen Master is, because I've tried to do this in the BIOS settings as well, but it seems like the BIOS settings and Ryzen Master values are not exactly the same. And so when I change the voltage and I change the BIOS settings to, well, I change the voltage and the frequency, the boost clock in BIOS to sort of reflect what I'm doing in Ryzen Master, it's not exactly like for like. And so it ends up being a little bit different. I had to tinker with it quite a lot, and it actually run into some instability issues to the extent where I had to raise the voltage, the CPU core voltage, and I couldn't get it to perform just as well as I could with Ryzen Master. And that may be just specific to this motherboard or something. This is an MSI B450 M Pro VDH Max, obviously M, right? It's in a micro ATX case. And so this is essentially the best setting that I've found for the performance that I'm looking for to keep a pretty reasonable temperature. And so I'll open Cinebench up just again. And let it run once again with this new setting. So you'll see it will get up to the 80s, mid 80s, maybe as high as 85 or so, nearing 86, something like that. But that's not really too bad, air cooled, and it doesn't drop clocks from that. It'll stay at 4050 the whole time. And with a Cinebench score of 7236, it's really not bad. And you can go watch Gamers Nexus review of this CPU. You can watch Jay's 2 cents as well about it, and they'll tell you pretty similar things, that it's hard to get it to boost pretty much at all without a high voltage on all cores. Once you run into multi-core applications, you end up the boost clock ends up pretty much cutting way down anyway. So you'll see I've got 84 right now, And if you notice, the score also went up by like 200 or something. It's gonna hit 85 soon, it looks like. Maybe, maybe not. $85, there it is. I don't foresee it going much higher than that, and there aren't really a whole lot of things you're going to be doing on a computer, especially if you're interested in it for gaming, that are going to really be running it this hard for this long, and so you're probably not even going to see the 80s. So like when I'm running Unreal Engine, even when I'm doing like a building lighting or something like that, or even a full build, when I'm doing pretty much anything in there, or even if I'm exporting video or something, it doesn't really even get up to this because it doesn't use the CPU 100%. It uses maybe a couple of the cores 100%, and it uses the rest of them sort of partially, depending on how the program is set up to run the separate cores. But in any case, that's just about all you're going to see. And this is successive runs, and the reason that's important is you might find stability at a single run, and then, well, it hasn't gotten totally hot yet, and so it can maintain those clocks at that voltage. And if you let it run several cycles, it might actually crash. And if that happens, then you need to raise it, but you wouldn't have seen it in the first run because it wasn't totally heat soaked yet. And now it's slightly warm. But now to do some open a game. I'll actually open up Shadow of the Tomb Raider because I know that that's pretty heavy, not only on GPU but CPU. But let's see. And I apologize since I am doing this all in a single shot, so you can see exactly what I'm doing the whole time and that it is closed. And so you can hear the noise as well. And I've installed Reshade on this thing, but I'm not going to use it right now. But just to show you sort of in real time as I'm doing it, what I'm getting, as opposed to cutting away from it and coming back to it repeatedly. So, displaying graphics, I'll do 4K high since I know that that's kind of like a common setting for a lot of benchmarks. So instead of custom, I'll just do high. Because normally I turn off, what do I turn off? Motion blur. I usually turn off motion blur. And some of the, well, you saw just a second ago that I set some of the things to higher values than the high setting, and I set some things to lower. Okay, and this is with AMD Fidelity Effects contrast adaptive sharpening on, but this is just 4K high setting, and I'm just gonna run the benchmark. Let's see what it does. You can see over here what the temperatures are. And actually, before I start that, okay, I'm going to set this thing back to factory. What should I set it to? Automatic. Default. Alright, so it's now at default, and I can open manual, and it'll show me what these values are essentially. Even if I enable this, I can see what the... No, it won't. I got to apply these changes first, so that it's not holding any of my changes that I was using prior. And it shows you that it's 2209 megahertz max and 500 megahertz minimum, with a voltage of 1.025 or 1025 millivolts. This is the stock clock speed, which you'll see is 2000 megahertz. and the power tuning, which is 165. Well, that's what it's using right now. It will go up a little bit higher, I think, and I'm not gonna mess with any of the fan tuning. I could. The standard tuning allows for zero fan speed below 55 degrees Celsius, which I'm kind of happy about. Okay, so I've left those at manual, but realistically it's at automatic, and I'll just leave it at auto. Okay, and I'll do the benchmark real quick. Let's see what it does. You'll still be able to see the values up here on the top right hand corner, FPS and such, and you'll see the results of the benchmark as well. Once again, 4K high in DX12. And I believe I have the desktop audio set low enough that this isn't gonna blow your eardrums, but I'm not entirely sure. I should have double checked that before I started this, but you'll be alright. As long as you're not wearing earphones or headphones at high volume, you should be alright. So 175 watts is the highest I've seen so far. And you can see there the GPU temp. And it is at 99% utilization. It's doing about as much as it can with this given power limit. The CPU, however, is working pretty hard. This is with the added max of 20 percentage utilization coming from Streamlabs. So normally it's not that high, but it's still pretty high in this game. So the CPU is creating quite a bit of heat in there as well, and we obviously heat soaked it as well. And the GPU ran a little long enough, sort of sitting around before I started the benchmark, that it was able to get up to temperature a little bit. So you'll see it's the GPU temperature of 67, 68 more often, I'd say, and a GPU junction temperature just in the 80s. '83. Yep, still 69, 83, something like that, which, let me check what the temperature is in here. I'll be right back. Doing the video still? So it is currently, I don't know, I've just put my phone away, I had it here, 26 degrees Celsius in here. So there were the temperatures that you could follow along the way on the screen, and you'll see them here again as well, because it's obviously running this at pretty much full utilization. It says an average of 79 with the individual values down here. This is CPU stuff, and then this is GPU right here. Minimum 69, maximum 127, average of 84. And I'll say when I'm not running OBS in the background, or Streamlabs, I know the OBS users argue that Streamlabs is not OBS, but whatever. Anyway, yeah, this is pretty normal. 69, I'd say maybe just a little bit higher. I've actually got a screenshot of when I ran this before changing any settings and such while not running Streamlabs. Yeah, I mean something pretty similar to that. Pretty much only one off on occasion. So I'm gonna, and actually I'm wrong because I didn't set it in 4K high. I had it with my own custom settings. So I will run it again, but this time I'm actually gonna change the GPU settings just a little bit, just to do a mild overclock undervolt. And so you'll see this is still the stock settings that it was at. So I'm actually going to run this up to 2300. I guess I could just type it in. And let's hope it doesn't crash, because I'm doing this sort of as I'm doing it, as I'm recording. So if it were to crash, I'm going to be screwed for the video. 950 millivolts. Okay, and I'm going to actually turn this up so that it can use as much as like 210 or 215 watts, something like that. I'm not going to change the fan tuning. I feel like it's fine. And I'm actually going to leave, actually, you know what? Let me change the, I don't know if this will crash it, changing it right now while I'm doing a video. Nah, I'll leave it. So I'm going to leave the VRAM alone. I've just increased this to 2300, decreased the voltage down to 950 millivolts, and allowed the power limit up 15%. Should reach, if I remember correctly, something like 215. Alright. So, let me just double check. Okay, now I've applied changes. And now we can run it again. The reason I'm leaving this view when I do it is because my hotkey for it is Alt R, and if I press R while I'm here, it'll start to run the benchmark right then and there. So you'll see the temperatures will go up because, of course, I've increased the power limit. It's no longer going to be running those 170 watts or whatever it was. And you get to hear the noise in real time. But I would say that this is more than what it more noise than it usually is. And I'm sitting sort of at the back side of it, which is where the exit is, where normally I have it sitting next to my TV and blowing sort of away from me. So it's significantly quieter. To me, at least, because it's at a distance and it's not facing right at me. Maybe I'll do another video where I record it just on the camera while I'm gaming it, so you can hear the noise without it running Streamlabs in the background. Seems to me like it didn't change. If you look at the actual voltage, or wattage rather, is still the same. So I'm gonna stop it, and I don't know why Radeon software does this sometimes, but it does. It really does do it sometimes. I'm gonna drop this to 13 and apply changes, and then I'm gonna take it back up and I'm gonna apply changes again. Still running only in the 170s. That's annoying. So that's something to check for whenever you're doing it yourself, is whether it's actually taking all of those changes into account. So I've closed it. I'm going to change this to 8. And then I'm going to take it back up. Maybe if I change it outside of game and then go back in. Sorry, my camera's kind of in the way of my TV. I'm not going to change the settings at all, but I am going to go back and check them just in case they change themselves. And if my camera dies, which it may, because I'm using it as a EOS utility, I'll just grab another battery and throw it in. Let's see here. 4K. This is still on. VSync is still off. This is still on high preset. Okay, cool. That is still not changing. $160, $165. Mm-hmm.
I also have all the samurai armor now.
You got the samurai armor? Bye. Wow, that's annoying. So that is one thing that on the 5700 XT I did not see that. Every time I changed it, it did actually change. And this one, for whatever reason, Radeon software is not applying those changes right away. So I'll try running it again. Let's see what it goes up to. Hopefully it gets to the 210, 215. Or maybe that's just the case because this preset is not the setting I was using. Still, I think it's weird. Yeah, we're not going to get very different results because this is, or maybe the performance difference will be, the benchmark will show us different values, but as far as thermals, we're not going to see a difference because the GPU power is still the same, and that's kind of ultimately what determines it. It's like, of course, the airflow of the case and such, but the power limit. And so the 5700 XT would run up to about 215 or so, which is what this one does, with the power slider raised to the max. And if I were going for high frame rate, this probably wouldn't be the setting I'd be using. I wouldn't be using 4K high. Probably be doing 1440 or maybe even 1080. And of course, this is not the sort of game where that really makes much sense because your response time is not quite as needed as in something like CS:GO or something. And so I'd likely just cut this down to, and this makes a lot of sense for pretty much any game, to avoid the variable frame rate constantly, especially on a TV. If you're using a monitor that has variable refresh rate, then you'd want to set it still somewhere near your monitor's frequency range. So for my TV, I would honestly just set this down to 60 FPS. And then it wouldn't be as variable as high as 120 some or whatever it was. Because if it's going to dip all the way down to the high 60s, I don't want it going all the way up to the 120s, and then dropping back down. And to make a smoother, to get a smoother viewing experience, I'd really just leave it at 60. If it's going to be dropping all the way down to the 60s anyway. And if I were doing it in 1080 or something, I'd probably just set it to 120. And I know it'll go above 120, but it's going to drop down too close to 120. And then that way I wouldn't have any change in frame rate. '81, 71, 132, 87, 77. So it seems it did change, but for whatever reason it's not running full power. It's probably because of the heavy CPU utilization in this game. But I'll open something else up just to try to get it to run to the max of 200 and some. So let's see, what should we open up? Breath of the Wild. Actually, this isn't going to work it hard enough. I've got it set to 1440p, and so it's not going to. Let's pick something else. Ocarina of Time. That might do it. Alright, so I'll just jump right in. And right now it's like set to something pretty low, but I'll change that. First of all, let's run out of here. Okay, we're out here. Let's set this to whatever the highest is. Epic. Show FPS. It's giving us 60. And I'll change that real time in the moment. Alright, everything's at max. And I'll just take off the frame limiter. Right now it's set to 60, so it's not using the full power. 15, 30, 45, 60. So this is as much as it's gonna do, and it's still only running 180 watts. That is weird. Let's see, what if I raise this back up to 1025? Still not, still 190. Let's try this. I can't really set this game setting any higher either. And it's not really heavily CPU utilized, but yeah, I don't think so. I think that's the max for this. Well, what did it get to just now? Let me get over by this water. Actually, when I target the enemies, I think is when it goes up pretty high. Oh, but I don't think I purchased a shield yet, so I can't even do it. This guy's gonna stop me and he's gonna be like, hey, you don't have a shield. Whack. So I can only hit 40 some frames here. See it hitting 50 just a little bit, but it's getting as high as 190 watts, and it's still not even 90 junction temperature. 90 degrees C. And like I said, this is actually quite a lot louder than it normally is when I just have it sitting over there, for the two reasons. It's distant and it's facing the other way. The other one, the most important one, is that I'm not constantly running Streamlabs while I'm doing stuff. And maybe I do if I do a live video or something when I'm playing like Assetto Corsa or something. And I think I have seen it go as high as 95 junction temperature in the cases where I've seen it get to the full 215 or so watts. 200, it just hit 200 right now. Part of that may be because I don't have performance mode in Streamlabs right now. Let's try that out. So it's not constantly rendering that. Yeah, it's not quite as high as I'd like it to be, so that I can show you sort of where the limit ends up being. But the highest I've seen is 95 watts. I mean, 95 degrees junction temperature. And I want to say like 76 degrees GPU temp, non-junction. Average, or whatever that happens to be, wherever that other sensor's placed. And let's see, if I lower this, lower the resolution on this, let's try to get the frame rate as high as I can get it, maybe. Let's say 1080. So now the GPU can take a little bit of a break. And let's try to get that frame rate up. Let's see what it gets to. 70 still, huh? It's probably the ultra settings, the culling distance, the LOD setting, and all that. Let's drop it even more. $720 medium. Yeah, and I know medium looks kind of garbagey on this 720. Alright, let's see what the frame rate will get to. Just because I want to work the CPU a little extra hard, and sort of see what happens during gaming. So let's open up Ryzen Master, take a look at that temperature once again. Close to 70 while running Streamlabs and using an RX 6800 at 720. So under 70 degrees while gaming at max FPS at a low resolution with this card. So I'd say that's pretty reasonable. Let's see, is there anything else I can think of? Minecraft Dungeons won't do it. Maybe Destiny 2 will do it. Because I don't think Death Stranding does. When it decides to open up. So it's still there. I hope it's still recording. Since obviously I have no way of checking while I'm looking at Destiny. See if I have to turn the settings up at all. Sorry to anybody who's watching this. I don't mean for this to be boring. I just wanted it to be continuous. So video, VSync off, frame rate cap off, field of view 85, highest. Alright, let's see what it does. Not even close. 100 watts. Oh, I didn't apply the changes, of course. Okay. Frame rate cap. This is off. And then apply changes, and then we'll go back to it. I don't know why the remote's not working right now for it, but and I can barely get it in the 170s. So, as you can see, with the power limit turned up, and I know it's funny, it's like moving my camera still. Even if I turn my voltage back up to the standard, can't get it to run hard enough with Destiny 2 or Shadow of the Tomb Raider to get it past 200. Well, anyway, that's conclusive enough for me. I mean, that's generally what I'm going to be using it for. Is I'm going to be using it for 60 FPS, 4K high in some games if I can, and in other games probably a little less than that. If it's hitting under 60, then I'm probably just gonna tone it down a little bit. What? I thought I had set it to highest. $180, $185. $186, $187. Okay, that was not bad. So as you can see, I'm trying to get it to work harder, just to get it to heat up, so you guys can see. But it's just not that hot, and this does feel warm coming out of here. But you know, under 90 junction temperature is well below the 110 limit that AMD claims. What's up? Just doing a video, man. Just to test the computer. Yeah, to see how hot it gets and stuff, you know. Anyway, might as well tone this back down. What's up? Move on. Alright, go back to video. And I'm just gonna put this back to 60. And sometimes it'll claim it's like 90 some percent usage still, and then it won't even be doing like 100 watts. So that was a lie. Yeah, but this video is a bit of a dud just because all of the extra noise from Streamlabs. Alright guys, I know it's been a long video. If you skip through it, I don't feel bad at all. But I'm so glad this made it into the video. Let me make this a little bigger so you guys can see exactly what I'm typing to them. Let's see what he says, if he's still on. And I gotta go here in a minute. It's jujitsu time. It's 4:45. I gotta leave in like 15 minutes. Away? Come on, man. Anyway, I'm sure he'll get a kick out of that. But yeah, I can't get it to run past 95 even when it is running the full 215 watts or something like that in non-CPU intensive games. And I can't get the CPU. Well, the CPU only runs up to about 85, and that's like running Cinebench or something super heavy like that. And outside of that, it doesn't even pass really 70 most of the time, even on Unreal Engine. So I'm very happy with it, and this case has been, well, first of all, it's beautiful, right? I mean, that's why anybody watches any videos about it, is that they hope that it performs well enough because it looks awesome. And in my case, it really does. No pun intended. Anyway, I don't even know if I'm going to post this video because of the added noise from running Streamlabs in the background. But in the event that I do, and you've watched to this point, I'm going to do another one where I'm not running Streamlabs and I'm just recording with the camera. So you can hear the real-time sound of what it should be like while I'm not doing that. Anyway, I'll see you guys later. It's time for jiu-jitsu.